Welcome to the Vault XL. This is live number 2. Please check out my earlier content pertaining to the murder of Deshina Kyle. The perpetrator, John Bassett, her ex-boyfriend, will stand trial on Monday in Knoxville, Tennessee Criminal Court. I will bring you an update pertaining to the said proceedings and information relayed. Live number 2 is pertaining to Lori Vallow Daybell. I will be recapping last week's events all the way up until yesterday. So this is going to be several days of recapping because I did not give a lot of information near the end of the week of last week or this week. So I want to recap everything that's been said and done since last Monday on the 24th up until yesterday, which was the 5th of April. Thank you for joining me. Hello, Patricia Parker. Thank you for joining me. You all have a safe weekend. God bless all of you. Be safe. If you see something, say something. Be a part of the solution and not the problem. Mind the children. Please check out my content from yesterday pertaining to the West Boys and testimony from the Sun. It's basically a recap of the past few days of testimony in the California court. Let's get started with Lori Vallow Daybell, everybody. Thank you for joining me. Recapping from the 24th of April all the way up until yesterday, May 5th. Thank you so much for your time. This was day 9 of court, 4/24/23. Sergeant David Stubbs testified that Alex's electronic device was the only device found between Chad and Lori's properties on September 8th through the 9th, 2019, and September 22nd, 23rd, 2019. Nicole Heidemann testified to electronic evidence showing plans put together between Chad and Lori to get married. Nick Balance begins to testify to cell phone data for Alex, Chad, and Lori on September 9th, 2019. Day 10. Summer Shiflett, Lori's sister, blows up at Lori in a phone call. She's clearly blindsided that Lori knew that Tylee and JJ were buried in Chad's backyard. Can't believe that Lori was in Hawaii with Chad. FBI special agent testified about finding Tylee's human remains. Said the smell had a decomposition odor. Described the human remains to be charred, and there was pink flesh still in the human remains. Said it was a difficult sight to process because the human remains were dismembered and some were melted together. The self-storage plus unit surveillance footage is played. Shows Lori and Chad storing a spare tire and rear car seat. Later shows Lori and Alex removing the spare tire and rear car seat. It also shows Alex removing 4 gun scabbards from the unit. What were they doing? Moving furniture, moving her things somewhere? Or was this to discard the bodies in the back seat of that SUV? Day 11. FBI Special Agent Steve Daniels testifies about finding JJ's human remains. He and his team uncovered JJ's entire body wrapped in plastic and duct taped. Dr. Garth Warren, who conducted the autopsies of JJ Vallow and Tylee Ryan, testifies to JJ's cause of death: asphyxia by plastic bag over the head and duct tape covering the mouth. Dr. Warren says Tylee's cause of death was homicide by unspecified means. Dr. Angie Christensen, who examined Tylee's remains, testified Tylee's skeletal remains had evidence of thermal damage and sharp trauma. And I brought you that content last week pertaining to the viciousness of wounds exacted by these perpetrators. Areas of her pelvic region and pubic region. Do not know if these injuries were sustained while she was alive or after death. But it's horrific nonetheless, because it doesn't matter if it was done while she was breathing, while she was dying, or after death. It's inhumane to be stabbing a person, period, number one. Number two, it's wrong to be stabbing a person after death. So we don't know if this is some type of symbolic ritual or just something to do out of hatred for the said child. But there was hatred there, and I've said this before in my commentary. There was hate there. I do believe Lori Vallow Daybell resented being a mother at some point in her life, and this would have been the point when she decided to concoct the deaths, the planning, the conspiring of her children. Whether she participated, held the children down, dismembered the children. We're going to bring you evidence that links her there. Now, one can refute it. Well, these are her children. Hair could be on any of their clothing, transference of hair. True, true, and true. But who's going to care? Because we do believe she conspired in the deaths of her children, whether she took the blows to the children or not. She's a party to this madness. Okay. Once again, her death is undetermined due to the fact that she was dismembered and melted down and put inside of a green bucket. Her remains were found in a bucket, as many of you remember hearing this testimony a week or so ago. And then you also got to hear the conversation between she and her sister when she was in jail from I believe it was 2020, where the sister is going off on her, having knowledge of knowing where the children were. It's a very sick situation. Let's go to day 12. Douglas Halapaska, who examined Tylee's skeletal remains, testified Tylee's hip bones and lower spinal bones could have been stabbed or chopped by items consistent with a knife, cleaver, machete, hatchet, etc. Tylee's DNA was found on a shovel, pickaxe eye, and pickaxe handle. It's very gruesome information here. Alex Cox's latent prints were found on the black plastic bag and duct tape on JJ from the crime scene. Samantha Williams, Tammy's sister, recalled Chad's phone call where he told her about Tammy's death. He said Tammy had been really sick, coughing all night, got up from a coughing fit around midnight. He said he was awakened by her the next morning when she had rolled out of bed. Who else was involved in the murder of Tammy Daybell? Was Alex Cox there before, after, during? Which is it? Cell phone pings put him at a church near their home. Did he help orchestrate the death and positioning of the body, staging of the body? It is believed that her body was staged, Miss Tammy Daybell, because her body was cold to the touch. And I do believe rigor mortis had set in, and I believe testimony will say that she was hard by the time ambulance got there. So she hadn't died at the time that Chad Daybell says she passed away. Alex Cox prints on the black plastic bag and duct tape from the crime scene pertaining to JJ. It's very scary information. And once again, hip bones, lower spinal bones have been stabbed or chopped by items consistent with knife, cleaver, machete, hatchet pertaining to Tylee's remains. So how was she murdered? Was she suffocated as well and then chopped up afterwards and melted down, asked to discard her remains and not be found? Why one child burned and the other one not? Very interesting information. We also have to ask if the children were murdered the same day or different days. Did this crazy nut, Lori Vallow, believe this BS of doomsday, or was it just something to put out in the element to get people to follow because they knew they were going to kill these people? You have to ask yourself, what's the truth in the knowing of right and wrong? Is she mentally stable or she is unstable? She has some type of medical diagnoses, have had this issue, but nobody really knew that she was ill, this ill. And as I always tell you, people do like to tell what they do to other people. And I think they couldn't just directly tell people they were going to kill these people. So this is where the doomsday comes in. You know, putting all this mess out here to the friends and associates, because really they wanted to tell people, hey, we're about to kill these people, but we can't really tell you because then you'd call the police on us. So we're going to tell you that God said they're going to die on this day and the world's coming to an end. And I think they're going to die this day. People have to let somebody know that they want to kill someone. They have to tell somebody. And I do believe this was their way of, as we would say, dry snitching. That's the appropriate word to use. Street terminology. They were dry snitching. I can't just tell you I'm going to kill my kids, my husband, this person, that person, my wife. But I can tell you God said they're going to leave at this age. They're going to die this age. They're going to be in a car wreck. They're not going to make it. You see, the demon has to tell somebody what he and she is going to do. And in this format, they did it in a dry snitching manner. Didn't come out directly to say, hey, I'm going to kill my kids, my husband. But they used God, as I call it, pimping Jesus. Use it as resurrection and the God told me I saw a vision. But deep down inside, they wanted the world to know what their plans were. And you got that testimony, plural, in court by several entities. As far as Tammy's death, as I said, the time is not adding up to the time that he gave Mr. Daybell versus forensics. But these are the same people who went ahead and gave the okay that it was natural causes. You also heard the bantering back and forth with the medical official to her changing her diagnosis after consulting with other, I believe, medical examiners versus the defense's questionings. And one could say, well, that's not a good look because you put this lady at as dying of natural causes and now you changed it up. And so far, a manner of death, as far as murder, has not been exacted on her death certificate, if I'm not mistaken. And are her children or sons covering up with the father to say that these events happened of her waking up coughing, not well, getting tangled up in the sheets? Is the son lying for the father? And do they still support their father, Mr. Chad Daybell? Okay. Now, I just gave you day 12's information. Let's go on up to day 13. The jury heard Tammy's voice on a 911 call where she reported an incident with a man with a paintball gun. The jury heard Chad's voice on a 911 call where he reported Tammy as deceased. You hear him crying here, showing more emotion than you've seen and heard by Miss Lori. Now, one could almost believe him if you did not know all these events of people being dead. One would say, oh my goodness, he was mourning his wife. He was so sad. And God forbid, the operator was mourning with him. Oh my goodness, this man is calling. He's tearful. He's upset. What does that lady have to say now who took the 911 call? Chad's general statement on what happened, according to witnesses, is that Tammy woke up around midnight with a coughing fit, vomited in the bathroom, then went back to bed. He said around 5:40 a.m. Tammy fell from the bed. He told the coroner that he pulled the covers, which may have caused her body to fall. Tammy was observed to have red pink foam coming out of her mouth. What was that from? Chad told the coroner that Tammy had previously been fainting, had shaking fits, some convulsions. Witnesses observed Tammy taking fitness classes, that she had not been coughing or complaining about being sick. That's day 13. Murdered is the new synopsis pertaining to her death. Body exhumed, asphyxiation. So what happened? Suffocated with a pillow, plastic bag, hand over the nose, mouth. How did she meet her demise by Mr. Chad Daybell? Or did he use his wife's, his soon-to-be new wife's brother's hands to kill his wife, Mr. Alex Cox, who is also no longer living? Do you see the irony in this case? There's nobody around to tell you anything. Children dead, husband dead, wife dead, brother dead. Stay woke. My. You get in the fold with these people, your lifespan is cut way short. Who was next on the chopping block pertaining to these heathens? Who killed Tammy? Mr. Daybell or Alex? Day 14. Senior DNA analyst testifies a hair attached to a piece of adhesive matched the DNA profile for Lori Vallow. And let me say, the numbers are so high, it can't belong to anyone but Miss Vallow. Dr. Eric Christensen, who conducted Tammy Daybell's autopsies, testifies Tammy caused the death asphyxia, Tammy's manner of death, homicide. Tammy had acute injuries, bruising on arms and chest consistent with someone who was restrained or asphyxiated. Frothy foam coming from Tammy's airways is a manifestation of pulmonary edema, which is associated with asphyxia deaths. Now imagine had she had an autopsy, all this would have been seen by a licensed medical examiner. Imagine that. Had she had an autopsy in the beginning, all this would have been seen. So the froth coming out of her mouth is from being asphyxiated. Checkmate. Bruises on chest from being possibly held down. Now, Queen's going to say, what was she wearing at the time of death? Long sleeve, nightgown, sleep shirt. Nobody checked to see what she looked like underneath her pajamas or gown. Was she in a robe? What was she wearing? Because here they say she had bruising on her chest and her arms. So how is it that no one checked her arms? Because it says here, consistent with someone who was restrained or asphyxiated. Yes, indeed, Miss Rose. I'm also thankful I'm not a part of this family. Because guess what? You could be a part of a family that's diabolical and they don't chop you up into little pieces. I'm sure many of you can testify to not having such great relatives and family support. Thank God they didn't chop us up or throw us into the lion's den. Amen. Literally, let's say. Amazing what would happen if a lot of people were exhumed. We might have some more people who would be deemed murdered here in the United States. Imagine that. You see, I believe all this is from small town business. Christian man, no problems with the law, no run-ins with the law, no altercations between he and his wife and children and people of their family. So we'll just push it under the rug. It looks like she died, natural. Case closed. Until all these other people started going missing and allegations of people being shot at in their driveway in other states and new marriages got the ball rolling for these exhumations of Miss Tammy and findings of 2 dead children inside of a shallow grave. My. And I'm sure these two look back in hindsight and say, what did we do to get to this point? How did we mess up and get caught? Well, you were killing too many people, for one. And even in small towns, we know that people talk and people Google, such as with Miss Tammy Daybell's sister. She started Googling Miss Lori, and voila, look what she found out. Oh my, her husband didn't die naturally. He was murdered by her brother, and now she's married to my dead sister's husband 2 weeks later. Checkmate. Now, I believe a second grader could put this together. That don't look right, because it ain't right. I tell you to stay woke. Because that's an old saying. If it don't sound right 9 times out of 10, it ain't right. You love somebody so much that you're willing to marry a new person within 2 weeks of their death. Natural death, allegedly. My. And now look what love has done for Chad and Lori. They're both incarcerated. Surrounded by dead people here and there and exhumed. And they get to listen to all of this in court. You talk about cruel and unusual punishment. They deserve to hear every word. And all this will be repeated again in Mr. Daybell's trial. I'll bring you that set information here shortly of when his trial date is to commence. So we got Miss Lori's hair on a piece of adhesive pertaining to her son. Interesting. Day 15. Alice and Todd Gilbert, who were neighbors with the Daybells, testified to Chad's demeanor the day of Tammy's death and the day of her funeral. Alice said that Chad told her not to tell anyone about Tammy's death, or at least wait an hour before telling anyone. Why? Why is that? What's the secret? What was the secret, Chad? She died naturally, remember? So what's the big deal? Alice and Todd Gilbert also testified to Chad and Lori looking like 2 affectionate teenagers. They also recalled Chad saying Lori recently lost a daughter. Oh, my. We're touchy-feely with people, and and somebody just passed away. Oh yeah, your wife just died. And you're playing footsies with this blonde-haired chick over here. Do you see the blatant disrespect for human life, for sanctity of marriage, for how stuff looks? They didn't care. And that's something that I think nobody really wants to address in this case, besides the deaths of these people, the gruesome deaths of these people, is that these two people were playing footsies, not just under the table, but over the table in front of people, and people knew they were married. The hell is going on? That's why the defense was going on and on with that one lady, Miss Audrey, about you following Lori here and following her around, and you all were going over here and being with her and friends. Not maybe not Audrey, but the other. I'm getting them mixed up. It was either Audrey or another lady that testified. You still were following these people around when you were hearing crazy things coming out of their mouths. See, this is what happens when people die and are murdered or missing. Anything you've ever done or said, they're going to throw you under the bus when it's time to ask you questions on the witness stand. Well, if they're so weird and jacked up, why are you still talking to them? Why are you their friends? Why don't you leave them alone? Why are you trying to be around them? See, most people don't think they're going to end up in a courtroom. That's why you have to be very careful what you say to people in confidence. You have to be careful of giving your visions to people. And God said this and told me this. And I had a dream about this and that. And I sometimes don't like my children. And I don't like my husband. You do not know the day when you will be called into court. And you have to explain what you meant by that. And why are you coinciding with people who have been doing not so nice things and saying not so nice things? Do you see where I'm going with this? You may not be accused of murder, such as these people here, but you may be a friend of somebody who killed somebody. And now anything you did and said with that person, you're now going to get scrutiny while you hung around. Well, they were crazy. So what did you want with them? Why are you calling her? Why are you visiting her? Why are you going to church with her? You don't believe in zombies, but you're hanging with a zombie-like creature. You damn self. Stay woke. You're acting like a zombie by hanging with somebody that believes in zombies. Oh, no, that's not me. Well, why didn't you tell her how you felt? Oh, I didn't want to hurt her feelings. I think we all have been guilty of not wanting to hurt people's feelings, but we hung around them anyway. Dated them anyway. Married them anyway. Stayed married to them anyway. You see where I'm going. Because we didn't want to hurt their feelings. Now imagine, fast forward, people are dead, and now you're called to testify about your dealings with this monster, Miss Lori Vallow Daybell. And you've got to now tell what you said to her and what she said to you, allegedly, to 12 members of a jury. See, you never know where you're going to end up in life. All right, here we go. Audio played of a podcast Todd listened to in November 2018. In the last 10 minutes, Lori is heard vaguely talking about her life turning really bad and wanting the Lord to take her. Well, maybe God had other plans, Lori. Obviously, you didn't. God didn't take you. But instead, you killed these kids. Very interesting here. In the end, she said she fought with Satan before telling those with her to turn their lives over to Christ. She also briefly talks about how the Lord sent her people. And that's how she got connected to Melanie Gibb. Imagine that coming out of Lori's mouth. God sent these people to me. Now, Lori, let's ask those same people how they feel about meeting you now after the fact. They've been hanging around with a walking zombie who's killed their damn kids and husband. And another zombie who killed his wife. And another zombie who helped kill your kids and Chad's wife. Checkmate. And also attempted to kill Melanie's husband. I don't think anybody's thanking God for meeting you and Chad and Alex. I'm sure they're wishing they had ran like hell. Now that they're having to testify in court and be judged for coinciding with you nimwits and possibly having knowledge of any nefarious dealings pertaining to the children and the wives and the husbands. Because many people still believe Melanie Gibb is a part of this diabolical schemes. I think she just made a mistake by, as most, she just kept dealing with her, and it got her in the hot seat to where the police had to come and ask her questions about JJ. But you heard in that conversation that's recorded, at any time, Lori could have implicated her in that conversation. But Lori and Chad knew that it was recorded, so they knew what to say and not to say anyway. But I still believe they could have said, you knew where JJ was because you did have him, blah, blah, blah. I don't think she had the child. I just think she foolishly kept dealing with Lori and Chad. And even when she saw the signs that they were canoodling and each were married, that was her choice to deal with them. But you can't say, I believe in Christ and the word and the scripture, and you're hanging with people who are married to other people and they're openly affectionate with one another. And then I do believe Lori told her that they had sexual relations. So it was just between you and God, your moral compass, Miss Gibb. You and anybody else that saw that these two had relations and they were married at the time. I'm going to finish this, everybody. Once again, she's telling these people in this podcast about how she was fought with Satan and telling those with her to turn their lives over to Christ. And yet she ends up working for Satan. How interesting is that? How interesting is that? We also heard, too, that on that day 15th testimony from the neighbors, that Chad was more business-like. That's what Mr. Gilbert said. Like he was handling business. And we know a lot of men are not emotional creatures. They do not cry. They do not fall out, stomp, and jump. And, when people pass away, maybe in their quiet moment, they may cry, for their loved one. But allegedly, he cried on the phone to the dispatcher. So how did he go from crying to the dispatcher to not showing any emotion the day of Tammy's funeral? What happened? Was he trying to put on a good face for his friends and neighbor and family members to pretend that he was strong? Or he was just doing what comes natural? He was a machine that nobody knew, a fictional writer who's lost his mind and become delusional and wrapped up in his writings and teachings. And he's macabre. He's numb. He's a sociopath. He's walking around pretending to be sane and Christian, but deep down inside, he is a monster. He's dug so many graves, he wanted to see what it's actually like to be on the other side of death, which is the orchestration of death. Chad Daybell, is that who you are? You were tired of digging graves. You wanted to be the one to put someone in the grave, literally. I've seen this side of death where they're still motionless. Well, I want to be on the side where they're alive and I get them dead. I want to see what that is like. Is that what happened to Mr. Daybell? That he got tired of just looking at the dead people, putting them in caskets and just looking at the casket close. He wanted to be near them whole, wholesome, alive, breathing, and then snuff them out. And say, I did that. Did he have a God complex? Lori, too. I'm always on the side of them going 6 feet down. I want to be the one to literally put them down. Is that what happened to Mr. Daybell? Curious. Because you can only deal with death so long, don't you think? Being a mortician, being a medical examiner, being a crime scene analyst, detective. How much death can one look at without it affecting him or her mentally? Just saying. Day 16. Lori's friend Audrey Baratiero testified about 2 separate times when Lori wanted to work on Charles Vallow and Tammy Daybell. This made Audrey feel uncomfortable. Audrey also talked about a time when Lori called her naive before threatening to cut her up and bury her. Detective Vince Kaya Kamono looked into Alex Cox's firearm. He had 6.5 millimeters Grendel with the vortex scope, which could have been misconstrued as a paintball hopper, the item that holds the paintballs. Very good information here, because that is the first thing I thought pertaining to the paintball situation. Tammy's looking at the person in the driveway. He's dressed in black. She doesn't know why he's there. She's really talking to him like he's just some random, kid playing around. I can't remember the words used, but it threw me off. Like, why isn't she saying, what the hell do you want? What are you doing here? Okay, it probably wasn't a paintball gadget. Because why he's going to go to this place to shoot a paintball? Think about that. Nobody's asked that question. They're knocking off people. They're conspiring to kill people. What are you going to do with a paintball gun? Exactly. Shoot her with paint? Maybe he got scared. Because you got to remember, if you have never murdered someone, you got to build up courage. But my understanding, her death would have came after Charles. So we do know he's already murdered someone. So let me take that back. He's already killed Charles Vallow, Lori's husband. So now, if we're to believe, she would be victim number 2. Maybe he got shook, got scared. But you got to be able to get away and pray that nobody saw anything, made you out, saw the car, blah, blah, blah. And we also have the Jeep put at the scene of Melanie's husband, Brandon Boudreaux's incident in the driveway. So you see, they were never smart in plotting their murders out. Because that was Tylee's Jeep. And what was her Jeep doing outside of Brandon's house? And now you have information from the court that this man had a weapon. And 9 times out of 10, that's the weapon that Tammy thought was a paintball gun. But it says it was a 6.5 millimeter Grendel with a vortex scope, which could have been misconstrued as a paintball hopper. Imagine that. Thinking someone's out here playing goofball games with you in the dark, but it ain't no paintball hopper. It's a real damn gun with a scope on it. So why didn't he shoot her? Because he was never linked to this crime when she reported it. You never heard that he was interrogated, from my understanding, as a suspect. So he could have gotten away with shooting her that day until all this investigating started. He would eventually have been linked. You don't understand what I'm saying. But at that time, he could have actually killed her right then. And they didn't have to asphyxiate her, hold her down and kill her, and make up stories that she was sick, because we now have testimony from people saying she was healthy. She was involved in sports and working out and doing said things. Not something that most sick people would do. And then you have her kids joining in with the lies with Mr. Chad. And that's even more scary and sinister. Because I think a lot of times people just don't want to see the worst in people. So they go ahead and ride the ride with the lies when they know damn well what they're saying is not the truth about what that person is saying. But that's my daddy. Daddy wouldn't have killed mommy. He loved her. Nah, no, he didn't. But in your eyes, he did. And that's the whole point about perception, is that what you see maybe is not what you think you're seeing. What you heard is not really what you think you heard. You see, life is an illusion. Seeing people happy, dressed nice, hugging, kissing, holding hands, showing up at church and events, they look happy until you hear the worst case scenario of someone conspiring to shoot someone in their driveway, someone dying allegedly, naturally, and then body exhumed, and you find out they were asphyxiated. Checkmate. So now you see the illusion was distorted. That what you thought you were saying with this lady and this man, it was a lie. Thank you for joining me. Audrey's testimony has been under scrutiny lately. That she's lied, is what the defense says. Why are you coming here? You took an oath to tell the truth. And you're here making up stuff about Miss Lori. She never threatened you. So did Audrey tell the truth, or she's adding on theatrics because of everything that's being said about Lori killing these kids and husband and wives and all of this? So she's wanting to get her 5 minutes of fame while making up stuff. Did Lori Vallow Daybell threaten Miss Batiera? Or did she just tell her she was naive and said a few negative things to her, but never threatened to cut her up, chop her up? Hey, she's done it though. So will the jury member even care? A jury member say, I don't give a dang. She's already killed people. Why not? Why not believe that she threatened this lady? They're so overt with their behavior, overt with their teachings and ideologies and zombie thumping and Mormon book thumping. Why not believe this lady? Who cares? Because you're going to have people who probably think like that. Hell, they've already killed 4 people. Why not? Why not threaten her? Is Lori this crazy and diabolical that she's willing to threaten an innocent woman because the woman doesn't agree with her in conversation? I'll cut you up, you don't listen to me. Because you have people like that. They want to fight you because you don't agree with them. Pop off at any given moment, conversation. You can't say how you feel. You can't comment on anything. You can't even say that the sky is gray, blue. That's offensive to somebody. They want to beat you up. So that's a very bitter person, angry person. When you can't say anything to them, they fly off the handle. Just get mad. Everything's personal. Was that Lori? Her brother tells you that. I played commentary, older content, where he said if you didn't disagree with her, she cut you off. She's done with you. Boom, gone. And in the end, she did everybody that way, including her parents. Is Audrey Baratiero, excuse me, I pronounced her name incorrectly. Miss Audrey testified in court last week. Did she lie about what happened between she and Lori Vallow Daybell? Day 17. Ian Pawlowski thought it was strange. Lori and Chad said there was going to be a spiritual attack the day Alex died. Angela Yancey talked about Tammy'S life insurance policy being increased and Chad placing a claim on this. Taylor Ballard talked about Chad wanting to get health coverage for his new wife. Detective Colin Nesbitt served order to Lori in Hawaii for Lori to produce Tali and JJ. Executed a search warrant and seized birth certificates, death certificates, laptops, etc. I also hear that she had at least, 15 or 18 pieces of paper pertaining to the death of Charles. About 18 copies, 15 or 18 copies. Dear Lord, why do you need that many copies of Lori? 2 or 3 copies of somebody's death certificate is enough, sweetheart. That's what Xerox machines are for and copiers and printers are for. And you all are so meticulous at murdering people, I would assume you'd have a damn copier and printer in your possession at the time you were constructing these deaths of these people. Will we get audio of these people talking about the deaths and not talking in circles and riddles? Just coming out saying it. But they would be stupid to do that. Would they not? They would be stupid. So we find all these birth certificates, death certificates, laptops. Detective Ryan Pillar investigated Brandon Boudreaux's shooting and indicated how it ties to Tali and JJ being missing. For Chad's status hearing, June 2024 is a prospective trial date. The state estimates a 9-week trial. The defense estimates a 12-week trial, both, including jury selection and the mitigation phase. This is information relayed on day 17. So on day 17, we have information pertaining to life insurance policies and how it was upped. Tammy's life insurance had been increased and how Chad wanted to get health coverage for his new wife, all in the same breath. Imagine that. Dear God. Just talking to people, not even thinking they're wondering what the hell is going on. It's very, very strange information. Lori Vallow Daybell is facing life in prison if convicted of murdering her 2 children and conspiring to kill her 5th husband's previous wife. The so-called doomsday cult mom has pleaded not guilty to 6 charges in Idaho, including 2 counts of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. An indictment accuses Vallow Daybell and Chad Daybell of espousing religious beliefs to justify the September 2019 murders of 16-year-old Tylee Ron and 7-year-old JJ Vallow, and the October 2019 murder of Tammy Daybell. Vallow Daybell is also accused of grand theft by deception for allegedly pocketing her children's Social Security benefits after their deaths. In this article, which is by Court TV and the information that you're hearing, you'll see a circumference view of them excavating the property of Chad Daybell when they seize these poor children out of their shallow graves. It is a sight to look at. And it is a reminder of how precious life is, and also how diabolical man and woman are, that you do not know people. And to exact murder on a 16-year-old who was 2 years shy of becoming an illegal adult, and a 7-year-old that could have been sent back to his grandparents, is absolutely atrocious. This is why I say you have to pay attention to people and their behaviors. And we know that sometimes that people could reach out to authorities trying to get help, such as what Charles did. But see, Charles hung on too long with Lori. He could possibly be alive today had he took his child and left. Now, I don't know what would have happened to Tylee if she got sent off somewhere, but Charles and JJ could possibly be alive today had he left Lori when she left early 2019 and went on her mini vacation to Hawaii and other places. He should have left her. Filed an order for custody, full custody, filed divorce papers for abandonment, and got the hell on out of Dodge. But he kept hanging on. And he gave her enough rope, her brother, and Chad, and that stupid niece, time to concoct his death, JJ's death, Tylee's death, and the death of Tammy Daybell. JJ and Tylee's remains were found on Daybell's property in June 2020, several months after JJ's grandmother contacted police looking for him. By then, Vallow Daybell was sitting in an Idaho jail on charges stemming from the children's disappearance. She was arrested in Hawaii February 2020, where she and Daybell had relocated amid a cloud of suspicion. Vallow Daybell's alibi notice says she was in her Rexburg apartment when the children died in the home of her now deceased brother. So, Vallow Daybell's alibi notice says, so I guess this is her defense, is that her brother killed the children while she was in her apartment. That's not going to fly, Lori, because you never reported your children missing. So you, what? Later found out your children were murdered by your own brother. He told you and you said nothing to him, and you said, I'm not going to even tell the police. See, that makes no sense. That's why you're on trial for murder, see? Because no one's going to logically believe you didn't know what happened to your children. You never went to the police to report the damn kids missing. So this is where your conspiracy charge comes into play. Then you were ordered by the court to produce the children and could not. You lied on Miss Melanie Gibbs saying she had the kids. She finally is in a recorded call saying she never had JJ. Although she lied at first to cover for you because she didn't know what the hell was going on, allegedly. See, this is how you mess up, you and Chad. And your henchman's now dead. And I also believe your niece and this Zulema character are also guilty. I believe they know a whole lot more than what they have revealed. And I'd like to hear the niece come to court and give her rendition of her dealings with you all and what happened with Brandon in that driveway. Because I believe she orchestrated that and you all followed suit We have testimony from your brother saying you're the cause of their marriage being broke up by you saying that the man was a homosexual and she believed it. You're messy, Lori Vallow, Daybell. And sadly, these people following in behind you and following in behind Chad. And we hear this in testimony. And that's what the defense is trying to lay out. Hey, don't blame Lori. These other people just as guilty for following in behind Chad and Lori too. So they must be just as wacky. Well, one could say that's true. Because at some point they should have seen the signs that something wasn't right when these two were playing footsies on top of the table and they're each married somebody else. So much for Christianity and following the good book, whichever book that is. You see, everything's about perception. You see what you want to see. You hear what you want to hear. Everybody's preaching about God and Jesus, but yet you're philandering with these philanderers. And we've all been guilty of dealing with people that we know were doing things with other people. We had knowledge, but in the end, we can't control people for having affairs. And people will tell you, don't get involved, don't say anything. It's none of your business. But you can't ride the ride of trying to be a Christian and willingly hanging with people that are having affairs openly. You know that's not right. We all know that's not right. And you can't be following this person as a righteous person or a leader of a flock, the second Jesus, if he's having an affair openly with another woman, his Christian Jezebel. Come on now. So you all were doomed in dealing with Lori and Chad. And now you have to carry around that burden of having dealings with them. Being scrutinized, talked about, gossiped. The latest news segment, such as this live stream. Now, Miss Daybell claimed she was in her apartment when her children died. And they died in a home of her deceased brother, Alex Cox, who the indictment describes as a co-conspirator. And naturally, he is not here to defend himself against the allegations. The notice also claims Vallow was in Hawaii when Tammy Daybell died in her home in October 2019 from what were determined to be natural causes. Authorities say the case goes back to 2018 when the couple connected over their religious beliefs, which set in motion the plot to kill Vallow Daybell's children. Chad Daybell was raised in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but friends and relatives say his faith had taken a turn toward fringe apocalyptic beliefs. Melanie Gibbs, once a close friend to Vallow Daybell's, who was expected to be a key witness against her, said the defendant came to believe her children were zombies inhabited by dark spirits based on Daybell's teachings. The case against the couple, however, appears to be grounded in traditional forensics, including cell phone records that investigators say connect the couple and Vallow Daybell's brother to locations where the victims were last seen alive. The case has taken a number of legal twists and turns. One of the most significant occurred in the weeks before the trial when Judge Stephen Boyce severed the couple's cases so they would be tried separately and took the death penalty off the table for Vallow. And as most of you know, this case went to trial April 10th in the Ada County, Idaho court. And Court TV has been covering this trial pertaining to Lori Vallow Daybell. If you need verification for the information relayed in this article, Court TV is the source. I have just given you a recap of last week's events, the week before, starting with April 24th, and we're going to make our way up to yesterday's events. I've given you information of forensics, exhumations of deceased children, exhumation of Tammy Daybell, the manner of death for Tammy Daybell, the manner of death of JJ, the death of Tyler undetermined but deemed a homicide. Don't know the method, but the manner of death is homicide. Lori's hair on duct tape, if I'm not mistaken. Fingerprints of her brother on a bag pertaining to the dead boy. So you wrapped him, and Lori, possibly you were there as well. One of you put a bag over this boy child's face to suffocate him to death and wrapped him tightly, bound him by hands, feet. And I also believe that Miss Daybell, Tammy, was restrained as well. Bruising to chest and arms, which were not revealed or mentioned at her time of death because it was revealed or relayed as natural. But there's nothing natural about someone compressing your arms and legs. So I'm trying to figure out how they missed the bruising. Why did anyone open up her nightgown, robe, or whatever she was dressed in on that fateful morning? And the time doesn't line up with rigor mortis and how cold and stiff she was versus what he told the dispatcher. And imagine being that dispatcher now, knowing that you were the one that took that fateful call, and now he's going to be going to trial for the murder of his wife and these other people. I'm sure this person plays back in their head the actual phone call from Mr. Daybell. And once again, where are the children standing as far as guilt or innocence of their father? This is a very diabolical tale of infatuation, false ideologies, jacked up perceptions of life and death and the second coming, Christianity, sex, I guess, and greed. All in one whop. You're entitled to believe what you want about Miss Vallow, if she is sane or insane or just evil. Same for Mr. Chad, the brother, Melanie, the other Melanie, the niece, Miss Zulema. But there's always somebody that knows the truth and refuse to tell the truth. And that is Chad and Lori. The other people, I don't know their parts. If they had knowledge of anyone being murdered or to be murdered. But I don't trust Zulema and I do not trust Denise because they were her right-hand aides. And the one thing I heard on Court TV that is the truth, and no one has really discussed this. Don't you find it strange that all these people following in behind Chad and Lori were women? Not too many men were in this group of castings and prayer groups. Stay woke now. A bunch of women following in behind Lori, following behind Chad, listening to this garbage. But you don't hear of a lot of men. Now, I don't know how many men are in the podcast group at that time. But in this little clique here, it's all girls. Stay woke. Court TV is the source. Let's hear the latest from Court TV pertaining to the events in court this past week. I want to thank you all so much for following the content. Doomsday Cult Mom trial. Victims were obstacles for Chad and Lori. Court TV is the source. One moment, please.
and fascinating information coming from one of the special agents who was testifying in this case as well, talking about the investigation, what they found, the pieces as they put them together. Think about what this case was like. This was a puzzle with pieces just scattered everywhere, from Arizona to Idaho to Hawaii, and someone had to put all this stuff together and figure out exactly what was going on. I mean, that's kind of what we had to do here at Court TV when we first came across this story. We didn't quite understand what was going on, but we knew there was something there. And then, day after day, week after week, month after month, we were finally able to put things together to a certain extent. And now we're learning a lot more at this trial. So let's take a listen to Special Agent Doug Hart, former FBI agent here, talking about the search on the Daybell property and on Lori's iCloud.
During the course of the investigation, it became apparent that Chad Daybell acted as a quasi-religious leader, and that Alex Cox was involved in the alleged conspiracy as it related to the deaths of the children and Tammy Daybell. And this is an instance where Lori Vallow is communicating to her brother, Alex Cox, regarding the things that she is learning about him. The reference to going to check with my source tonight, I believe, is a reference to Chad Daybell.
So think about this, right? So Lori is now reeling Alex into this whole thing. She's met this guy, Chad, and here's what prosecutors are laying out, right? She meets Chad. She wants to be with Chad. She's got a husband. She's got kids. He's got a wife. I mean, how are we going to be together? Well, let's bring Alex in so he can take care of everything. Bring it up.
Let me stop right here. On what day did Lori, Chad decide that they wanted to be together unobstructed by spouses and children? Did it happen in 2018 after they shortly met? Or did they conspire in the year 2019? Because that was some very long months of when Lori disappeared from her wifely duties and motherly duties and went on a hiatus, I believe, from the month of January to March 2019. And then her husband was murdered by her brother, July of 2019. And then the deaths of the children and Tammy took place thereafter. So those are some very long months to conspire in the deaths of others. So I'd like to know, when did these two conspire to kill their spouses, children, and at what point did Lori consult with her brother, the decedent, Alex Cox? And is his death murder? Because Tammy was exhumed, and now it is said on the record she was murdered and not natural. Could it be possible that Alex may have had health problems, heart problems, but he too was murdered because he is an orchestrator? He had guilty knowledge and he could hang them in the end. And although they have been brought up on charges without Alex being alive, is it possible that they did kill him because he was dead weight? He knew too much because they used him to kill everybody. Thank you for joining me. You're now listening to the Vault XL.
Well, let's bring Alex in so he can take care of everything. Bring in Alex. He'll believe anything because Lori knows that Alex will do anything that Lori says. Why? It could be partly because Alex probably wanted to be Chad in this whole scenario. Anyway,
Absolutely.
Let's bring in Court TV legal correspondent Chanley Painter. Join us live from outside the courthouse in Boise, Idaho. End of another big week. But today taking us kind of behind the curtain into these private text messages, Chanley. Lori and Chad communicating. This is significant stuff because we can't forget this is a conspiracy case.
Exactly. And this is an investigator, the head of the FBI investigation here, really putting all the pieces together for this jury to show each co-conspirator's part and what they played through Lori's iCloud account and planning. Let's take, for instance, Tammy Daybell. We've covered this extensively and how Chad and Lori were making some moves well before her actual death, and including planning their honeymoon before that time. Let's take a listen.
This is a text between Chad Daybell or a text from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow regarding plans for the two of them to get together.
Can you please read that?
Yes. Line 2967. Concerning the 2 weeks, BYU Idaho's graduation is July 23rd. Adam is getting his bachelor's and Leah and Joe are getting their associates. They are all walking in the same commencement ceremony. I feel she will be gone by then, but I will still have that hoopla to deal with because a lot of my and Adam's family are coming and will stay for July 24th. So I believe that's why the Lord hinted I might not get to be with you until that is over. Please ask about that.
So the Lord hinted that, they would not be able to, go to Hawaii and get married until that is over. Ask about that. This is in July. This is just a couple days after Charles Vallow was shot by Alex Cox, the man you just mentioned, Vinny. And we know that it wouldn't be until October 9th, there was an attempted shooting on Tammy's life. And then she was allegedly murdered October 19th. And then these two on the screen were in Hawaii getting married on November 5th.
Okay, so this goes towards trying to prove this conspiracy relative to the murder of Tammy. How about communications about Charles, Tylee, and JJ on the other side of the equation? Lori's responsibilities, Lori's family.
Well, again, these messages Doug Hart is pouring through in front of the jury. He only got up to July so far in his testimony, but before he started his PowerPoint, Vinny, told this jury that there are communications between Chad and Lori about the deaths of all of the victims covered in this trial. Tylee, JJ, Charles, Tammy, between the two. And not only that, there's a specific term that Chad would call each of these victims in the messages that they saw a recurring theme of. Let's take a listen to him explaining that to the jury earlier today.
There is a secret spur.
All right, everybody, brief commercial break. So we're going to hear the words used because, as I said, do they have text of them just saying verbatim, this, and this about the person gone? No, they knew not to talk like that, either on the phone verbally or through text. So he talked in riddles. Let's hear that information.
Theme of. Let's take a listen to him explaining that to the jury earlier today.
It was apparent that they were very quickly after meeting involved in an illicit affair with one another, and that they shared plans to be married and have a life together.
Were there any other investigative leads or concepts that needed follow-up?
Yes, as part of the plans between Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow, they had obstacles that were in the way of them achieving.
I don't object. This is argumentative.
Sustained.
When you say they had, understand the court's ruling, so you identified the leads that followed up. Did you find information or discussion that there were barriers to their efforts to be together?
I'm going to object this to argumentative. The question is argumentative.
Judge, it's an investigative process, and if it had significance to him, the jury is entitled to hear that, especially if it factored into his creation of a summary.
It's overruled.
Thank you, Judge.
There were several communications regarding Tylee and JJ that were relevant to their deaths.
Okay, how so?
They discussed their deaths.
Okay, and what did that have to do with the concept that they had begun an affair or planned a future together?
After the affair began, there then began to be communications regarding the deaths of Charles Vallow, Tammy Daybell, JJ Vallow, and Tylee Ryan.
Okay, any conversations about Tammy Daybell?
Yes.
Okay, and was there communication that law enforcement had to follow up on that suggested that those individuals were considered barriers to the by the defendant to her future with Chad Daybell?
I object this to argumentative, Judge.
Overruled.
The exact word they used in the communications was obstacles.
Okay, and just to be clear, the communications between who?
Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow.
Okay, and they characterize JJ, Tylee, Tammy, Charles as obstacles.
Correct.
The jury during the FBI agent's testimony today, Vinny, looked serious. They would lean into the screens, read along the messages as he read them in front of everyone in the courtroom. There was one moment where one juror on the front row during the James and Elena text messages earlier today, he kind of bugged his eyes out a little bit and then put his head in his hands, trying to hide his expression. But coming up on Monday, again, we expect to hear from this investigator the whole day. We're going to learn more about the affair, more about the deaths and how they communicated about that, and the financial motive as well, Vinny.
So we're close to the end here for the prosecution case.
It sounds like it. Not sure if they'll call more witnesses after him, and then we may even hear from the defense next week. What will they do? We'll have to wait and see.
All right, Shanley Painter in Boise. Long week coming up next week. So rest up this weekend. Thanks so much. All right, let's bring in our think tank. Joining us tonight from Los Angeles, Deputy Public Defender.
Before he lets his guest speak, once again, what is the exact date of the conspiring to kill the family members? Because they met in 18, the fall of 18, and this affair went into left fall, winter, and then into the new year of 19. And once again, Lori took a hiatus from her life with her family and then came back to resume pretending to be a mother and wife, but it's obvious that she and Charles were no longer, they were just legally married. But you hear testimony here by the detective that they were making plans to be together, and they've went through a lot of texts, I'm sure exhausting work to do, matter of fact. What is the exact date that these two said, hey, we've got to knock these people off, we've got to get rid of these people? Because naturally they've talked personally. Not on the phones, not through text, but together. And I'm sure at the times that they've met up, they talk personally. Hey, we've got to do this. We've got to get rid of this person. And I'm sure they use a lot of this church rhetoric or doomsday rhetoric. Hey, they're demons, they're this. They're draining us mentally, physically. We can't be a part of this. We're trying to be a part of the flock, the 144,000. We cannot be around these people, blah, blah, blah. But they've spoken personally in front of each other is what I'm trying to say. I'd like to know the date. I guess it doesn't really matter, but I'd like to know when they actually said to each other, we've got to kill these people. And then one would wonder, did they even use that terminology, or they just talked in riddles in front of each other? They're dark, they're this, we can't be around them. They're not going to be a part of this journey. They can't be a part of the chosen ones because they're dark. What was said and when was it actually said?
Public Defender for LA County, Philip Dubé. Also with us from Cleveland, Ohio, criminal defense attorney Ian Friedman. And from New York City, former senior homicide prosecutor Bernarda Villalona. Great to see everyone tonight. All right. Let's talk about conspiracy here. This is a conspiracy case. They're planning a life together. They have 4 obstacles. All 4 obstacles dead. Chad planning to marry Lori, but not going to a divorce attorney. Talking about she's going to be dead. Are we putting the pieces together here, Philip Dubé? Does this sound?
Let me interject here as well. This is where it goes back to what I said about having to tell somebody the plan. Because some people believe they just made up this stuff because they knew they were going to kill these people, these family members. Most people have to tell somebody. They can't hold the secret alone. And I find it very baffling that these idiots would project this to strangers, such as Lori telling someone that Charles and the boy child were going to be in a wreck. Then we have this fool here, Chad, telling someone he believes his wife won't make it to 50. She didn't make it to 50 because you killed her. That's why she didn't make it. Same thing with Charles and JJ. They didn't make it, Lori, because you orchestrated their deaths. There's a difference. None of these people have been deemed dying by natural causes. Got hit by a car. You orchestrated their deaths. And they had to tell someone. That is the gist of this story. They had to tell somebody. So this is why they're talking in circles to strangers about the vision. I had a dream she wasn't going to live long, Tammy. Lori's spinning the same web to another stranger. Don't you all see the connection? They wanted people to know, but not know. And that's where they messed up. You had too many people knocked off, one after the other. That is strange. Do people die one after the other that are related to each other? Yes, sometimes. But this is too suspicious. Shooting at someone in a driveway, shooting at someone in her driveway. She ends up dead 2 weeks later. Then you marry a woman you've been having an affair with from 2018. Now her children are missing. Her husband died months before, killed by her brother. Do you see the connection? No way nobody could miss all of these deaths, missing people, and not think there's something wrong with this story. Dead wife, new wife, children missing of the new wife. End of the year, brother dead, co-conspirator of all the deaths. The information had been there all along, sitting right there. And sadly, these people who were following in behind Lori and Chad, Zulema, Melanie, the other Melanie, the niece, these people in the podcast group, you were sorely misled. You were deceived, bamboozled, hoodwinked by Chad Daybell, a fat-faced Teletubby Build-A-Bear who's now sitting incarcerated and possibly may face the death penalty for the deaths of these people, and he so rightfully deserves it, and so does Lori. And why she's not getting it is a mystery to me, but they both deserve the death penalty, in my opinion, because they had no right to kill these people. As you hear Vinny say, why not just get a divorce and keep it moving? But instead, you wanted to pretend that you love Jesus and be in the church, sneaking around, having affairs, and pretend that you're holier than thou, knowing you've murdered these people, conspired to kill these people, and steady talking about Jesus Christ. These people are blasphemous to the fifth power. Just blasphemous.
Are we putting the pieces together here, Philip Dubé? Does this sound to you like a conspiracy?
There are missing pieces, but yes, it's starting to sound like a conspiracy.
We're at the end of the case, Philip. We're at the end of the case.
I feel you. I hear you, but I'm not seeing it beyond a reasonable doubt. Not yet. I want to hear what the defense has to say. Of course, on its face.
What if they say nothing? What if they say absolutely nothing?
Then she's going down like Amelia Earhart.
Okay, good.
That's what's going to happen. Oh, yeah. Okay. She's got to put on something, okay? I am not convinced. Remember, Vinny, and maybe the think tank remembers this, in the pre-trial stages, Lori Vallow went to a state hospital to undergo what's called competency training, meaning she was mentally incompetent during the proceedings. That means defense counsel could not rationally defend the client because she was out of it. She had to go to the hospital. So what does that presuppose? That she was also in the throes, in the pangs of psychosis, mental illness, while with Chad Daybell. And I truly believe that she was perimenopausal with late onset of schizophrenia and was embattled by dark spirits and internal stimuli and voices. One of the things that is
she's got the dark spirits
literature,
and she's a zombie. She's got to go. Should be a death penalty case.
Not quite so simple. It's really not, because what is missing here, truly, is why somebody in the throes of psychosis would succumb to this. And the literature will tell you that many people, late onset, late in life, have tremendous fears of abandonment because they don't want to be left behind with the voices, with the internal stimuli, the sounds of demons, and then this conflict with deities. So what happened? She fell prey to Chad Daybell, and she trusted him to carry the mantle, if you will, but of the good spirits and not the dark spirits, and kind of went along for the ride because she did not want to succumb to the demons that were within her. And if you notice now, she was successfully treated twice while in the state hospital so that they can resume criminal proceedings, and she appears to be rationally cooperating. I hope for her sake she puts on some kind of a mental defense. Otherwise, like I said, she's going down. One last point, and that is in criminal law, particularly in conspiracy and in the law of homicide, there has to be a union, not just of the criminal act, but of criminal intent, the criminal mind. And when you have a disjointment, if you will, of both, you cannot convict. Not where you have a crime that has a specific intent behind it. But we'll see what she's got.
Yeah, well, she did. I'm going to have Bernarda respond, and then Ian, you'll get the rebuttal. So Bernarda, I'm looking at this, and I'm like, she's the one recruiting Alex. I mean, Chad has no idea that Alex is a guy who will do whatever Lori wants him to do.
True.
And what Lori wants him to do, according to prosecutors, is kill some people.
Exactly. So, Philip, thanks for the background, but the jury's not going to know about all those competency exams. That was for us to know about the competency exam. That's why the prosecution in this case moved forward with her case first, because they didn't want to jeopardize that she will go back to being incompetent. Aside from that, the reality is that if we keep it simple, this woman and this man, they loved each other beyond words, beyond all these love letters, beyond all these telenovela stories, and were willing to do anything and everything so they can be together. That included killing the kids and getting rid of the wife that was in the way as well. And I think the jury, they can see that simply. It's not going to be an issue when you put all the pieces together and you make the argument to the jury. It's not going to be an issue at all. Just keep it simple. And also, again, a jury's not going to get past the fact. It's like, you're the mother of these two kids. Where were they? What were you doing with them? Why weren't you looking for them? Why were you chilling on the other side of the country with this man and telling lies about the whereabouts of your kid? And I think that alone gives so much strength and weight to the prosecution's case that it'll be easy for them to come back with a conviction in this case.
You know, Ian, that loin fire was just burning hot.
Stop it.
It was burning hot. To me, that's what this is all about. Two married people with a lot of obligations. They call them obstacles. Commitments. They call them obstacles. Were in the way.
You know, Vinny, you asked me to talk about law, but you always throw these things at me, starting with loin fire, and you want me to get into a legal.
Hey, Chad's words, not mine. Chad's words, not mine.
So let me say this, Philip. I agree with everything you said, and the four of us could have a really great legal academic discussion right now. We really could. But as I recall from the opening. Now, of course, the defense doesn't have to telegraph where they're going to go. They didn't even have to give an opening. But when they did not talk about this sort of defense. Maybe they'll get there. I agree with you 100%. If they don't, she's got zero chance. I think she has very little chance now. Bernarda, I'm with you on this one. I think there's too much death here, and you have the death of two children.
Yes.
The jury's not going to love any sort of defense suggestion unless, as you said, Philip, they've got something as strong as you just put forward. I'm not seeing it right at this moment, but we all know as trial lawyers, we wait till the very end. As of today, she's in big trouble. We'll see what happens by next Friday's think tank.
Yeah, I would love, I want the jury to get to the truth. So I would love to see her get up on the witness stand like every other criminal defendant and give us their side of the story. Just get up there. Give us your side of the story, and we'll figure out if it's reasonable. That's all.
All right, everybody. What is the defense for Lori Vallow Daybell? I want you to ponder that. Legally, sane, or insane, Lori Vallow Daybell. The motive, plural, for the deaths of her children, Charles and Tammy, and possibly even her brother, Alex Cox. One moment, please. Testimony and text messages. Interesting. They talked in circles about their spouses. They were obstacles. As I said, they knew not to speak directly about the children and the spouses. Hey, I want to get rid of them. Hey, they're in the way. Hey, I want to get my brother. And one thing that was said just now that Vinny says that I believe is possibly true. Chad would not have known what Alex was capable of. How would he know? He didn't know him. He barely knew Lori. He had to spend whatever he wanted to spend to Lori, vice versa, because I don't know who put in the idea first of getting rid of their spouses and how it all came to fruition. But in the end, she brought in her brother, Lori's brother. She brought her brother in to be a part of this mess, this macabre conspiracy. But there's no way that Chad would have known that the brother was capable of murdering children, spouses, or his own wife. And I do believe he did help in the demise of Tammy in some form or another, due to the fact his phone pings at a church nearby the Daybell's home. This is just very sad. Very, very sad. Friday ended week 5 in the murder trial of Lori Vallow, or Lori Vallow Daybell, where a former special agent with the FBI testified he reviewed thousands of pages of cell phone data that indicated Lori Vallow and her husband, Chad Daybell, discussed the deaths of her children. Lori Vallow was charged with murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and grand theft in connection to the deaths of her two children, J.J. Vallow and Tyler Ryan, and the death of her current husband's late wife, Tammy Daybell, who would have turned 53 years old on Thursday. Lori Vallow will no longer face the death penalty, but could be sentenced up to life in prison. There are no cameras allowed in the courtroom, but KTVB investigative and courts reporter Alexandra Dugan was there. Cole Vallow texts Lori Vallow again, begging for information about their dead father 4 days after his death on July 15, 2019. What happened? When did it happen? How did it happen? Where is he now? Is there any funeral plans? Cole Vallow writes. He was our dad, and we love him very much. We deserve answers. Cole Vallow asks about Tylee and Kobe Ryan are doing, and if J.J. Vallow is safe. What does he know? He writes. This isn't a nonchalant topic you can throw a text at and be done with it. Hart said he did not observe any empathy or remorse coming from Lori Vallow to her husband's children. After that, the court adjourned. Chad Daybell texts Lori Vallow on July 13, 2019, 2 days after Charles Vallow was shot. Concerning the 2 weeks, BYU Idaho's graduation is July 23rd. Adam is getting his bachelor's, and Leah and Joe are getting their associates. They're all walking in the same commencement ceremony. I feel she will be gone by then, and I will still have that hoopla to deal with, because a lot of my and Adam's family are coming in, will stay for July 24th. So I believe that's why the Lord hinted I might not get to be with you till that is over. Please ask about that. Ask what, Chad? Do you all hear this conversation? He's talking about his children graduating and then say, oh, I believe Tammy should be gone by then. And says, the Lord hinted I might not get to be with you until that is over. Please ask about that. So you wanted her to ask the Lord. So you believe what? She had a special connection to the Lord to orchestrate what exactly, Chad? These people really are crazy. So what is she now? Mother Mary? She's sitting at the right hand of God. Oh, hey, Lori, will you ask God about that? This is insane to me. The next day, Chad Daybell texts Lori Vallow. Good morning, my beautiful Lily. Thanks for joining me in the shower this morning. Wow. Getting ready to leave for my meetings. I love you so much. The whole universe knows it. Lori Vallow replies, morning, sunshine. Sure. Call me when you get a chance. Chad Daybell later responds, I love you so much. You are my greatest desire and my best friend. Now on with the story. Interesting. Now on with the story. Okay. This story, Hart said, is how Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow met in their past lives, according to text messages he's read between the two. That relationship was now meant to continue in this lifetime, he texted Lori Vallow, who he referred to as Elena in her past life. Chad Daybell referred to himself as James. He says in the messages their connection was so intense that it created physical desires. It was as if their spirits were making love, Chad Daybell wrote. A group text between Lori Vallow and Charles Vallow's sons is shown to the jury from July 12, 2019. The defense has objected multiple times to the text being testified to, but the judge has overruled them. Lori Vallow writes, hi, boys. I have very sad news. Your dad passed away yesterday. I'm working on arrangements, and I'll keep you informed what's going on. I'm still not sure how to handle things. Just want you to know that I love you, and so did your dad. Who in the hell messages a person the next day after the father has been brutally killed by your damn brother? And you see that there's testimony to where they've lied to people, neighbors, that her daughter was already gone, dead. And that's what that Scott Peterson had done with that girl he was messing with, telling her his wife had died and Lacey was still alive. Can you imagine someone telling people that you are dead and you are breathing? These two, I mean, there are no words for these two. Okay. So here she's telling the boys that the father has died a day before. One of Charles Vallow's sons texts back and asks what happened. She doesn't respond. They follow up with this text. Lori, what the F happened? You can't just tell us our dad died and disappeared. You're not too busy to let us know he died and disappeared. Lori Vallow texts her brother, Alex Cox, on July 9, 2019. I'm going to need you to stay closer to me the next couple of days. They are planning some kind of intervention, she says. Thank you for standing by me, and she will be like Nephi. Hart said in the Book of Mormon, Nephi was commanded by God to kill his brother Laman, so this stood out to him. Exactly. She's talking in third person. Okay? They are planning some kind of intervention. She says, thank you for standing by me, and she will be like Nephi. So when she says she's speaking of herself. This is crazy to me. March 26, 2019, Alex Cox texted Lori Vallow. Correct. Charles's body is alive. He then follows up with, what did you learn? Lori Vallow responds, a lot. Still working on it. We'll call you later. Hart said he frequently saw Lori Vallow text people working on it, and Alex Cox would take direction and advice from his sister fairly often. July 9th, 2019, 2 days before Charles Vallow was shot and killed by Alex Cox, Lori Vallow texts her niece, Melanie Pulaski, who was previously Melanie Boudreaux, around 9 p.m. that they have an absolute plan and she will call later. Pulaski replies, I could take all the babies with and drive and take our stuff. I could take all the babies with and drive and take our stuff. What is that supposed to mean? Lori texts back, you can't go at all. We both need to stay here to defend ourselves. It's all coming to a head. This week will change everything. So that means she knew. This is July 9th, 2 days before Charles died. So that means Melanie knew of the plan. Okay? Because now she's talking more direct than the talking in circles with her and Chad. She's more visible in her conversations here with Pulaski, the niece, saying they have an absolute plan and she will call later. The niece replies, I could take all the babies with and drive and take our stuff. And then Lori texts back, you can't go at all. We both need to stay here to defend ourselves. It's all coming to a head. This week will change everything. So that means she knew that she was conspiring to have her husband killed, and she told her niece. And you got to remember, her niece's husband, Brandon, was shot at in his driveway. And Charles's truck was the getaway car, which is supposed to be Tylee's truck. So Tylee didn't do it. So that leaves who? Alex or Lori or Melanie. This is insane. Text between Audrey Baratiero, who testified Wednesday, and Lori Vallow are shown. Hart said Baratiero knew about the affair between Lori and Chad. See, once again, Christian friends, associates knowing of an open affair. I just think it's fun to talk to someone who knows what's going on, Lori Vallow texted Baratiero. This goes back to what I said to you all about criminals wanting to tell people about what they've done, what they're doing, what they're going to do, because they're tired of holding the secrets to themselves. They have to share. They have to let somebody know, I'm sinister, I'm diabolical, I'm in control, I've got a God complex, I'm getting ready to murder these people, I'm getting ready to get revenge. They have to tell someone. And so here she's sharing her intimate details about Chad to this Audrey person. I just think it's fun to talk to someone who knows what's going on. Chad Daybell wanted Audrey to act as a buffer between him and Lori until Tammy Daybell died, Hart said. Hart said he followed multiple leads coming from data in Lori Vallow's phone, like examining the relationship between Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell. After the affair began, there were communications regarding the deaths of J.J. Vallow, Tylee Ryan, Tammy Daybell, and Charles Vallow, Hart said. He stated these people were referred to as obstacles in the communications getting in the way of the relationship between Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell. There were several communications regarding Tylee and JJ that were relevant to their deaths. They discussed their deaths, Hart said. Hart said there were 4,500 text messages between October 2018 and November 2019 on the Lori Fastyle iCloud account, and he read every single one. Can you imagine gathering all of this information, the time it takes, deciphering anything you think is in code, and then having to repeat it verbatim in an open courtroom? Wow. March 20, 2019, Vallow sent a message to her brother, Alex. I'm finding out some great stuff about you. I'm going to do some sealings. It explains a lot. Oh, this girl is a trip. It took Hart well over 200 hours to dig through every record on Vallow's iCloud accounts, he said. 200 hours this agent has worked on her account to decipher all this information. Hart said people can delete data from a phone, but it can still be present on your iCloud. The FBI uses a program called Celebrate, which can take the contents of an iCloud and put it into compartments to allow law enforcement to go in and view what is stored on the iCloud. The program allows a filter which could capture a certain time within the data. Hart focused his efforts on data from October 26, 2018, when Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell met, and searched through late November of 2019. Vallow stopped using her phones around this time, Hart said. Hart said when looking for a grave, you look for differences in the soil. Typically, the vegetation on the grave is different than the vegetation around the grave, he says. Hart was able to observe differences in vegetation and changes in soil that surrounded the burial site of J.J. Vallow. You could feel with your hands the outline of where the grave had been dug was present there, he said. Hart's goal was to do a complete analysis on Lori Vallow's iCloud accounts named Lori Fastyle and Lolly Time. The iCloud account Lolly Time was created in April 2019. The account Lori Fastyle was created in 2000, Hart said. If a child is killed, they're typically killed within 24 hours of being abducted, Hart said. The FBI has a team called CARD, the Child Abduction Rapid Deployment Unit, that takes action to bring expertise to find a missing child. They are primarily consultants who help law enforcement. The FBI's involvement in the case began November 27, 2019. As soon as police realized the children were missing, they worked in conjunction with the Behavioral Analyst Unit and the CARD team. Hart is now the chief deputy for the Canyon County Sheriff, but just 8 months ago, he was an FBI special agent for 27 years. He worked in Hawaii for almost 6 years and then spent 7 years on the Nez Perce Reservation, working violent crimes and homicides. In 2001, he transferred to the Treasure Valley Metro Violent Crime Task Force, led and funded by the FBI, and later became a supervisor for agents in Boise and Pocatello. The defense is allowed to conduct voir dire upon Hart to determine if he violated the exclusionary rules set by the court that restricts witnesses from listening or reading prior testimony. And you know, this issue has come up at the beginning of this trial about people coming to court and listening to information and then having to be called as witnesses to give testimony. As for them not to be prejudicial in the comments that they give because they've listened to things beforehand and then maybe put a little of that, what they heard, into their own testimony. Okay. As I said, the defense is allowed to conduct this voir dire upon Hart to determine if he violated the exclusionary rule set by the court that restricts witnesses from listening or reading prior testimony. The prosecution says Hart was helping go through documents and interviews with the witnesses in this case, as well as preparing them for trial, which is customary with law enforcement. The court does not find any violation of the exclusionary rule, so Hart's testimony is allowed in. The court is debating whether or not to allow report summaries from former FBI Special Agent Douglas Hart, who has reviewed every report done by the member of the FBI in this case. These reports will reflect the text of Lori Vallow with her alleged co-conspirators, the prosecution says, and that's the follow-up of the information I've already brought you because they go backwards in this commentary. So you're hearing the latest of information all the way back to the beginning. The prosecution had to amend the exhibit late last night to fit the restricts of the court. The defense objects to hearsay on certain pages of the exhibits. They say Hart can testify to it because it's secondhand information to what others have told Vallow. Judge Stephen Boyce says, based on his interpretation of the Idaho Rules of Evidence, that the summaries are allowed and can be testified to. And that is the said information that I just read to you of the text messages between Lori and Chad and Melanie, the conspiring. At the beginning of court, it was an issue for the defense that the detective or the agent not read it because it was allegedly secondhand information, but the judge allowed this information. KTVB7 is the source, and that is the latest from the end of the week. Try to go back and get all the information revealed because I've been off a couple of days bringing you the said information. Let's go back to May 4th. As prosecutors present a fourth week of witness testimony in this trial, I'll just talk around. Lori Daybell, Ian Pulowski, husband of Vallow's niece, Melanie Pulowski, was back on the stand Thursday morning. He began testifying Wednesday afternoon. On Thursday, the defense asked for permission to play a recording of a phone call between Melanie and Chad and Lori Daybell from December 12th or 13th, 2019. When Vallow's brother, Alex Cox, died, the court did not grant that request, instead allowing the defense to ask questions about what he remembered from that day. Very interesting. Lori Vallow is charged with murder, conspiracy to commit murder and grand theft in connection to the deaths of her children, JJ, Tyler, and the death of her current husband's late wife, Tammy, who would have turned 53 years of age on Thursday. Testifying Thursday, Ian Pulowski, were the Rexburg health insurance broker whom Chad Daybell contacted about adding Lori Vallow to his policy. The payroll and benefits administrator for Tammy Daybell's employer, who handled Chad Daybell's life insurance claim after Tammy Daybell's death, a Kauai police detective who was on the team that executed search warrants in January 2020 as part of the Rexburg Police Department's investigation into the disappearance of JJ and Tyler, and a Gilbert, Arizona police officer who investigated the October 2019 shooting that targeted but did not injure Brandon Boudreaux, the former husband of Lori Vallow's niece, Melanie Pulowski, who then went by the name Melanie Boudreaux. KTV producer Jeremy Stiles followed Thursday's developments at the Ada County Courthouse. So I have to go all the way down to the bottom to work my way back up to everything that was mentioned in court on Thursday. Thank you all so much for your time. I'm almost at 2 hours in this live stream. Let's see here. This is cross-examination of Mr. Pawlowski by Archibald. He would like to play a recording of Ian Pawlowski on December 12, 13. Conversation secretly recorded by Ian, his new wife, Melanie, on the phone with Chad and Lori, discussing several issues: death of Alex Cox, religious issues, and blessings from Chad. I would remind the court that these religious issues are charged by the state as an overt act, Archibald said, going on to say that the conspiracy his client is being accused of is due in part to religious beliefs. Prosecution objects to playing of recordings on grounds that it would violate rules of evidence regarding hearsay. Said it was unfair of Archibald to refer to it as a snitch, which he did a moment ago. If recordings are not going to be used to get to truth of the matter, there's a question of whether they're relevant. Religious beliefs are not an overt act as charged by the state, but the theory is that they use those beliefs to manipulate or control others. Archibald rebuts. In a conspiracy case, what Chad says here is not hearsay. Alex is named in the indictment as a co-conspirator, and his statements are not hearsay. He said nobody but Ian and law enforcement knew Lori was being recorded. Interesting. Judge Boyce is taking brief recess to chambers to discuss whether to allow the recording to be played in court. At this point, the jury has not yet entered the courtroom. Now we'll go up to the next phase. Court was still in recess. Judge Boyce about to say if the recording shall be played. Lori Vallow and her attorneys have been standing behind their table, appearing to converse. She's wearing a black suit. Court is back in session. Judge Stephen Boyce finds the recordings inadmissible at this point, as they would constitute hearsay. Case law, he said, provides a limited exception, but this doesn't meet it in its determination. If the witness, Ian Pawlowski, were on cross-examination to contradict the content of those recordings, that would open up another opportunity for them to be played. Okay. Jury entering the courtroom following the judge's determination, okay? That the recordings by Ian Pawlowski of Melanie Pawlowski on the phone with Chad and Lori will not be played at this time. And I don't understand why they couldn't play it, because that's them holding their own conversation. So how is it hearsay if you have a recording of people talking in their own voice? It's not me repeating what I heard somebody say on the phone. I don't get it. All right. Next up, defense attorney John Thomas continues questioning Ian, husband of Lori's niece. Confirms he met Melanie in November 2019 and that they married in Las Vegas 10 days after they met. See, that was a mistake right there, meeting her and then marrying her that soon. Thomas asked if he went to court during proceedings involving her former husband. Pawlowski says no, he was not permitted to because of COVID restrictions. Chad and Lori were closest relatives Melanie had, Ian said, adding that she trusted them more than anybody else she had in her life. Pawlowski said he recorded calls between his wife and Lori and Chad at the request of the FBI. He said he stopped working with the FBI after about 2 weeks. He said wife didn't know he was recording, but she knows now. Pawlowski said he made recordings and turned them over to law enforcement, trying to obtain some kind of evidence. He said he didn't know what the FBI knew, and the mutual hope was to get anything that would help them find Tylee and JJ. I believe they were 9 recordings, Pawlowski said. One of the calls was December 12, 2019, the day Alex Cox died. Pawlowski said he knew he had recorded a phone call that day, but doesn't remember the specifics. From what he does recall, Pawlowski said Melanie had been told by Chad and Lloyd to go to a place of safety. She went to the temple in Rexburg. Pawlowski said he doesn't remember if Chad gave Melanie a comforting blessing that day, but it's possible. Blessings were flying around like flies, he said. When asked if he felt like he was being manipulated, Pawlowski said that more than anything, I felt like Melanie was being manipulated at one of the darkest times in her life. He said it felt like Lori was trying to get something out of Melanie, but there's no hard evidence. Lori was telling Melanie that law enforcement officers were dark, trying to impede their mission, Pawlowski said, when in reality, they were trying to find 2 missing children. And once again, that phone conversation that was recorded by Mr. Ian would not be played in the court. What a mess. Ian has been excused with no redirect from the prosecution. And Taylor Vallow, the Rexburg health insurance broker, is on the stand talking about dealings with Chad Daybell. Stand by for more on that. As for Pulowski, the judge released him from the state subpoena, but the defense indicated they may call him back. Judge Boyd said he would authorize a new subpoena if that ends up being the case. Insurance broker Tammy Ballard has been testifying about her interactions with Chad Daybell, who came into Ballard's insurance office in Rexburg, October 31st, 2019, asking about obtaining a new policy to take effect November 1st because his wife Tammy had died. The policy would be for himself and 3 sons. There was some discussion about whether Chad Daybell would qualify for Medicaid due to the loss of Tammy's income. Ballard said he qualified for a tax credit, but not Medicaid. On November 21st, 2019, she showed him options for 2020. He asked if he were to get married, how hard would it be to get his wife on his policy? Ballard said it wouldn't be a problem, but they would need to do it within 60 days. At this point, Chad and Lloyd Vallow Daybell had married. When asked when she heard from him again, Ballard asked to look at her notes. There have been multiple sidebars since this time. Ballard provided information on her dealings with Chad Daybell to law enforcement, including 15 pages of day-by-day interactions via text message. The defense has objected, claiming that they didn't have that information and that there was a discovery violation. So basically, you're getting just play-by-play from Thursday of Ian, the insurance agent, talking to Mr. Chad. Just a lot of crazy nonsense. And most of this I had already was revealed in this court TV segment. KTVB7 is the source. You also get information pertaining to Tammy changing her life insurance. It was signed September 8th, 2019. It went from $10,000 to $80,000. Everyone is offered $50,000. So the change increased Tammy Daybell's total life insurance policy to $130,000. Very interesting information. She worked as a librarian from the beginning of 2017. So they had testimony from someone from the school, this Angela Yancey, district employee who processed her payroll benefits information. I'm just trying to skim over everything that's happened lately. Okay. Then there was the search of Lori's vehicle. Lori and Chad were in a vehicle together, January 26, 2020. They were driving to a Kauai Beach resort, and then they were going through the exhibits in court. Let's see what else we've got here. Pertaining to the search warrant, Lloyd Vallow, Chad Daybell, of the car and the condo. This is where Lori was driving. Chad was in the passenger seat. The items they took was a tablet that had JJ's name on the back of the case. 2 laptops seized from a backpack were turned over to Rexburg police for analysis. An envelope with cash also was found in the backpack. Nesbitt, who was not asked about it, did not specify the amount. So I wonder how much was in there. This is where you saw 15 copies of Charles Vallow's death certificate, copies of JJ's birth certificate from Louisiana bearing his birth name, Canaan Tran, as well as birth certificates with updated information, Tylee's birth certificate and social security cards for Tylee and JJ. Nesbitt testified that police also found a bag of silicone rings, which may be wedding bands designed for wearing while exercising or in the water. Good Lord, these people thought of everything. Oh, mercy. What a mess. Just recapping most of the things that were found. And I think they're saying about $5,000 to $5,500 was in that envelope that was in that backpack. Also in the possession of Miss Lori was Tylee's credit card. Nesbitt had inadvertently knocked it off the front seat and asked if he sees anything in the photo that could be trace evidence. He says, I see some hairs. When asked if the hairs might be Tylee Ryan's, he said it's possible. Nesbitt indicated that he did not collect any hairs. A lot of information. Okay, everybody. Once again, there was no evidence of Tylee enrolling in college and no evidence that she drove the Jeep after September 2019. Cell phone data was gathered, which showed that in December of 2019, the device associated with Tylee's number was in Hawaii and had briefly been in Missouri. When asked if there was any evidence that cash had been exchanged between Melanie Boudreaux, now Pulaski, Chad Daybell, J.J. Vallow, or Alex Cox, Pillar testified that yes, Venmo exchanges had been made and substantial amounts were referenced in text messages. And this is where we learn information that from Tylee's phone, Venmo payments were sent to that said brother, Kobe. But we now know that that was not her sending the money because she was deceased. That was Lori using her phone. We also get information about the Jeep being read from a license plate reader. They headed south from Idaho Falls on September 30th, 2019, continued to Arizona, returned to Idaho Falls October 3rd, the day after Brandon Boudreaux was shot. The Jeep was searched November 18, 2019, and the police tried to locate Tylee. They never did. Pillar testified the photos were taken and that biological evidence and gunshot residue evidence were collected from the Jeep. The rear of the Jeep, Pillar said, had evidence that tested positive for chemicals associated with discharge of a firearm. So that was Alex using Charles or Tylee's Jeep to shoot at Brandon that fateful day. Rexburg made a welfare check November 26th. The next day, Thanksgiving, they completed more intensive search of the property where Cox, Lori Vallow, Chad Daybell, and Melanie Boudreaux lived. Interesting. They're all living together. This is where Lori has told the Rexburg police. Well, Rexburg police told Gilbert police that Lori said that JJ was in the custody of Melanie Gibb, a friend who lived in Gilbert, but police couldn't find JJ or Tylee at either location that she gave. They continued to look for JJ and Tylee in Arizona. They set up pole cameras to monitor the area around Gibbs' home and contacted people who might have known the children through school. All this is crazy information. Just trying to recap everything, everybody. And as far as Boudreaux being shot at, he was not hit by gunfire, and he drove away and was able to call 911. Alex Cox, Lori Vallow's brother, became a person of interest during the investigation. Pillar said he had learned that Boudreaux and Lori's niece, Melanie, now married to Ian Pulaski, were still in the process of finalizing the divorce and that Cox was involved in the death of Charles. So Ian is the new husband, Pulaski. Forgive me if I made it seem like that was the Brandon. So we're talking about two guys. One was Mr. Brandon, the one that was shot at, and then we have Ian, who's decided to give information pertaining to Melanie. So Ian was the one that was recording the conversations between his new wife and Lori and Chad and giving it to the FBI. This is a lot to go through. I'm going to stop here because most of this is more detailed information by KTVB 7 of all the things that happened in court pertaining to who testified and the information that they were given. But I just want to give you a rough synopsis of what was transpiring in court this past couple of days. Okay, we'll make sure I'm touching on everything. Let's see it. And they're projecting the court trial for Chad Daybell to be June 2024. John Pryor had indicated that the defense will be ready for May 2024, but a couple of prosecutors have scheduling conflicts in March, April, and part of May. The few of the factors are pertaining to the death penalty. Unlike Lori, he has waived his right to a speedy trial. There is DNA evidence that has not yet been tested, but will be tested at the request of the defense. Pryor talked about the DNA issue, but did not get into details starting the trial before May or June of next year could be problematic because some of the kind of pretrial hearing regarding the DNA evidence may be needed, he said. Pryor also said that the defense was still has about 100,000 pages of documents submitted by Special Agent Doug Hart. Pryor and prosecutors Rob Wood and Lindsey Blake also discussed with Judge Boyce how long they expected the trial would take. Estimates on the trial length range from 8 or 9 weeks to 12 weeks, including jury selection, and if Daybell is found guilty, the penalty phase. The death penalty is still on the table for Chad Daybell. Thank you all so much for listening to the content. I know it's a bit winded. How does Chad feel about all this information that's been released? Phone conversations, text messages between he and Lori, people testifying to them playing footsies under the table, over the table, walking around, touching, affectionate. The fact his wife has now been deemed murdered. He marries Lori 2 weeks later. Insurance policies upped, putting her on his medical and insurance. Miss Lori, just a lot of information that looks suspicious. And as they said, with all the conspiring, it's going to be kind of hard for 12 members of the jury to not think this woman knows right from wrong because there's too many entities involved, texting the niece, texting the brother, talking around the subject of these people who popped up dead, lying about where the boy was, trying to make it seem like somebody's out to get him or out to get her. But then he's found on Chad's property alongside Tylee. So who was out to get JJ? Nobody. Professing that these people are going to die. As I told you, crooks got to tell somebody something. They can't hold a secret to themselves. It all looks like somebody that knows what they're doing. But then the flip side is that court was delayed, this trial, because she was deemed incompetent by a judge. So what was it that the judge found not in her favor? That she was mentally incapable of standing trial years ago. And that's why you heard on Court TV why the state wanted to try her first. Because it could have came down to Chad being tried and then she pops up, falls out, and then she's not deemed fit, I guess, to give any testimony. So what is the defense going to say why these people were killed? What is the motive? Who did the killing? Who did the conspiring? Will the defense be able to show proof she didn't conspire to have her children and husband killed? That she was just following some guy, she thought he was the chosen one, and she was misled. That he came up with all the ideas, he and her brother, to kill her family, and she just went along with it because she believed he knew more about the prophecies that were to come. Will that be the defense for Lori Vallow Daybell? That she's mentally incapable, mentally incompetent, naive, gullible? What is the defense going to be? Because you're going to have to say something if she does not testify on her own behalf. And as you hear with Court TV, the defense does not have to prove or say anything. That's the burden of the prosecution. But as they said, she's doomed if you don't give an explanation, because that's what people want to hear. Why? We want to hear from her. We don't want to dissect any more text messages. We don't want to assume anything. We want to hear from her. Why did you kill your kids? Why did you kill your husband? Did you first mention killing these people, or was it Chad, or was it your brother? And how did you get your brother to go along if it was Chad that mentioned it? And what made you go along with it if it was Chad's idea? I believe they both were off their rocker when they met one another. How about that? And we're seeing this with couples in these storylines where children come up missing and dead, such as with the Wells. These people were tainted before they met each other. They both had cases involving DHS where the children were taken out of each one's custody. And these two were living in opposite sides of the globe, nowhere near each other, didn't know each other from a can of paint. They get together, make children, and now one's missing and their children are now in the state's custody. Do you see the irony? 6 degrees of separation. But yet these two people meet with similar backgrounds, And later their children end up in the state's care and one's missing, which is Summer Wells. Same thing with this case. Each person's married to somebody else. They get together. They've got wild ideas and ideologies about past lives and past marriages and being married to this person, that person, zombies, which we hear that Lori wasn't on board with that at first. But next thing you know, she's talking about light and dark and who's going to live and who's going to be dead. And he's saying the same thing about Tammy. Boom, next thing you know, all these people are dead. So who was the first person to mention this one has to go? She's dark, she's got to go. He's dark, he's got to go. She's dark, she's got to go. And the irony is that all the people that are dark are related to them. No neighbors, nobody from the school, nobody from a job, nobody from the church, nobody from the temple. Not the neighbor across the street, not the neighbor at the condo. Do y'all see the irony here? Everybody dark was related to Lori and then just Chad's wife. So Chad didn't have any dark children, no dark spirits there. No brother, sister that was dark. Same thing with Lori. Your sister, brother, they weren't dark, but you cut them off when they didn't agree with all this mumbo jumbo you've been spewing out. Even before you met Chad, they said you were talking some weird, wacky stuff. You cut everybody off, but you didn't go kill your mom, your dad, your brothers, your sisters, just your children and Charles. Same thing with Mr. Chad. You didn't kill your kids, but you killed your wife. How ironic. You all killed the obvious obligations at that time. Chad's children were grown, so all he had was his wife. Checkmate. Lori had a husband and kids. Obvious obligations. Get rid of them. Checkmate. Tali was almost grown. I don't even understand the point of killing her. And even though JJ was younger, she could have easily sent him back with Kay and Larry. But she didn't want to be deemed a horrible woman, horrible mother. So she did what she wanted to do, which was murder her children and her husband. And I do not know if the truth of what Tali said happened to Charles. She grabbed the bat. She wasn't trying to hit him or anything, but just trying to put it out for him to hate. Stay away from my mom. Allegations that they had a few little violent times in their lives together. She did not get along with him as a child. Obviously, there was friction in Lori's house that nobody knew about, if I'm to believe Tali's conversation to authorities. And that's why I keep telling everybody that everything's about perception, that what you see is sometimes not the truth, that people are not really happy beings. They're not happily married. They're not getting along with their children. The children are not getting along with their parents. And I think somewhere down the line, Tali was probably tired of listening to Lori spew out all this crazy nonsense and apocalyptic talk. And she probably told her too, she wasn't in agreement with her. So she turned on her own daughter. And then it was easy for her to turn on JJ because he's a product of Charles, direct descendant, relative. So once he became public enemy number one, she definitely didn't have any use for JJ. He's autistic. He's problematic, difficult to deal with. I've had enough. I've taken care of him. I've taken care of Tali. It's my turn. It's my time now. That's why she keeps referring to them as objects. I took care of them. I did for them. Basically, what she's saying is, I'm done. I've checked out. Mentally, physically, emotionally. I've checked out. I'm done. I don't want to be bothered with these people anymore. I want to be with this man. So that's why you know it's a combination of Lori having some mental issues already. She was exhausted in her relationships with her husband and her children. Maybe she felt like she was owed more. She didn't get everything she needed in life. She felt cheated. And we've learned that a lot of people, when they feel cheated in their life, they will do and say crazy things at some point. They will act out. They will act out. They'll show out. And maybe this is Lori's way, showing the world, I'm tired. I've been beat upon, beat down. I've had all these husbands and relationships never worked. She accused one man of molesting her children. They say there's no truth to that. I don't know if that's the truth. Mr. Ryan, Tylee's dad, he's not allowed to tell us the truth. But it seems like she had a lot of strife in her life. And perhaps this is where she started to deteriorate mentally, because we know that stress and personal problems can break a person's spirit. And it also can break you down mentally if your mind is not strong enough to adhere to your obstacles. And this is possibly how Lori became disillusioned and sinister. But the conspiring is what would lead people to believe she knows right from wrong. Is there something wrong with her? Oh, of course. But legally, is there something wrong with her? That's going to be the testament to her defense. Some say she's evil. Some say she's mental. But when you go and get somebody else to go kill somebody, that's more sinister and evil than you've got a mental diagnosis. And I think it's more to it than just they were dark spirits, they were zombies. Because if you didn't feel that way about killing them before meeting Chad Daybell, then one's going to say her jacked up ideologies mixed in with the Mormon faith and listening to these podcast groups, commentary, and Chad's illicit imaginary BS, plus his wayward teachings of the faith and apocalyptic talk was all it took. And sadly, these other people were following in behind. Even if they really didn't agree with what either one of them were spinning, they still were hanging around them. And that's where they made their mistake. Melanie, Zulema, Melanie, the niece, the other lady that was friends with Lori. You should have cut Lori off, and you should have cut Chad off. Hey, it's nice knowing you, but I gotta go. I don't believe in all this zombie talk, dark spirit talk, casting out demons. How are you going to cast out a demon without the person there? When did the Catholic Church ever do an exorcism without the person that's supposed to be possessed? Hey, Bob, we're over here having an exorcism. We don't need you. We'll call you back when we think we've got the devil out of you. Who the hell does that? That's why I said these people were stupid to keep listening to this BS. We're going to pray for Charles. We're going to pray for Tyler. We're going to pray for these people. See, who you all should have been praying for was Chad and Lori. And you should have also been praying for your own salvation, that you're sitting here letting the devil infiltrate your circle with a bunch of BS. Because now these people are standing trial for murders and fraud. And you better be glad you're not looped into having knowledge of any nefarious dealings with these people and the dead. Because you could also be on trial yourself. And Zulema and Melanie should definitely be up there on the chopping block with Lori and Chad. That's my feelings. Because we now have text messages to show she just talked to him 2 days before killing Charles about a plan going into action. And that they couldn't be around or go anywhere near this place or that place as to have a defense. That shows conspiring right there. And anybody with sense would have responded. We can't go where because of what reason? We need a defense for what reason? We're not doing anything. Melanie knew all along. And the state needs to bring her up on charges as well. That's my commentary for this weekend. Please check out my community board for the movie Fear, now playing on Tubi. That's my weekend suggestion. Please check my community board for polls, updates, breaking news. Please check out my earlier video today pertaining to Deshina Kyle. She was murdered 2 years ago. Her ex-boyfriend killed her, and he put her in a toolbox and carried her out of her apartment and discarded her in a crawl space of an abandoned house that belonged to one of his relatives. He goes on trial Monday here in Knoxville, Tennessee. I will bring you that said information. And if I could get one of the relatives to speak about the trial, I will definitely reach out to them to get their public opinion if somebody would like to speak to the Queen. If not, I'll just bring you the commentary from Knox County Court. If you'd like to donate to this great network, The Dream, $Beganji, 129 Cash App. Stickers and chats are welcome during the live stream. I may have left a little bit out from Thursday's commentary and a few days back but most of it's recapped at the beginning of this video pertaining to what was said in court the week before and leading up to Friday and Thursday's events. I think the only few days I've got left off would have been Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. It's a lot to bring and a lot to read, the recapping. So that's why I had to pause. But I thank you all for following the content of this network. Please have a safe weekend. If you see something, say something. Be a part of the solution, not the problem. Mind the children. I will bring you an update next week pertaining to the West Boys and what defense will be used for Jacqueline and Trezell West in the murders of their children. What part did the children play and what role did the parents play? Because the state feels they orchestrated the deaths of these children. Where are those children located? Where have they been discarded? Were they killed the same day, same time? Were they discarded at the same time? It's a lot of questions to ask because they're kind of similar to this case here in Idaho, where these children killed the same day, found in the nearby graves. But where were these two children killed exactly? Tylee and JJ. And why dismember one and not the other? Why burn one and not the other? This is a nightmare, both cases. And it goes to show you that whether you hand a child to somebody, give up the child for adoption, lose the child from the state, you have no idea where the child's going to end up. And no one's going to ever think that if their child is removed from their custody or they give their child to a friend or relative, that they will be the same ones to murder the child. But that has happened in both of these cases. JJ was given to the grandparents. The grandparents were asked if they could relinquish custody to Charles and Lori. And look what happened to JJ. West Boys removed from the care from their mother for neglect and abuse, 1 year apart from each other, each one removed by the state, put in the care of this family to later be adopted by them and then murdered by them. So you see, there are no guarantees from the time you are conceived in the womb where your journey is going to take you and where it will end. So we have to pray for the children because they don't know any better, that they will be in good hands by those who take care of them because they're not adults to take care of themselves. And unfortunately, these children, 7 years of age, 16, 3 and 4, were not afforded the opportunity to be in good hands with their caregivers and parents, and they are now no longer alive because they were murdered by their parents and adoptive parents. Have mercy. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. Have a safe weekend. You have been listening to The Vault XL.